at it.
Yes, because there's no better time than right now.
Right?
Well, not right now. Like maybe not right now. Like maybe after.
I will go take a look
If
at your Patreon.
If there's one thing I suck at is
Later on.
creating a sense of urgency in my in taking action on being a part of something. I watch Paul, and Everett's told me how to do it, and I just suck at it. That's all there is to it. Mostly because I'm lazy. So I was thinking. So tonight, when we're talking about if one thing needs to change in your life, sometimes that results in everything needing to change. And that can take many forms. And I'm only talking about myself. And some people will be able to identify, and some people will, I think most people will be able to identify with it in some measure. But so just what I'm talking about. So in the last year, I mean, everybody had a bad year last year. We all had a bad year. And I can't think of any better time to make the kind of radical changes to grow into something different than last year. We were given a plethora of opportunity of just shitty circumstances to go and do something better. And these were all my fault. I mean, I lost a house. And ended a relationship that I'd been in for 10 years. That was over. Became a single dad, got laid off from work, moved, had a total to my car. I mean, so all of these things are changing, and I'm keep moving forward. That's what it's all about when you start making a change. So sometimes you have to be aware that when you make that change, it will have a cascading effect in your life. I was watching Gina Carano's video today on Ben Shapiro. I found her to be this sincere young actress that was truly struggling with being hurt by some of the things that were happening in her life. Something changed in her life. Now it all changed. Everything has changed for her. Everything about her world is probably going to shift, and she's still a champion about it. I see it happen with a lot of people. And when you talk about Tyr and the wolf, sometimes we try to avoid that change. Sometimes we try to bind it, and it causes us a lot of pain. What happens when we can't avoid it? What happens when we know it's coming? We know that this is all going to fall apart, and yet we continue on. Do we ride that bus to the bitter end because it's necessary for our growth? Or do we get off the train when it's most suitable to our needs? That's the very difficult question. More often than not, we're not aware of when we need to get off that train. More often than not, we're not aware of when we need to make that real decision to say, I've had enough. Usually it causes us, we have to be in an enormous amount of pain. Or we need to be acting a fool. And then usually more pain. So what's that look like in our lore? Well, death is in mythology and spirituality, is a sign of radical transformation. So we're going to read Baldur's Drama. I'm going to read the notes here about it. They're kind of interesting. Baldur's Drama is found only in the Arnamagnion Codex, or however you pronounce it, where it follows the Harbarth's Leoth fragment. It is preserved in various late paper manuscripts with the title The Lay of Vegtam, which has been used by some editors, the Vegtam's Kavitha. The poem, which contains but 14 stanzas, has apparently been preserved in excellent condition. Its subject matter and style link it closely with the Voluspa. 4 of the 5 lines in stanza 11 appear almost without change in the Voluspa 32 and 33. And the entire poem is simply an elaboration of the episode outlined in those and the preceding stanzas. It has been suggested that Balder's drama and the Voluspa may have been by the same author. And there is also enough similarity in style between Balder's drama and the Kavitha, especially the opening stanza, to give color to Vigfussson's guess that these two poems had a common authorship. Well, so we have this same scenario being recorded in a couple of different areas. That means something. That means there's something we need to be paying attention to there. In any case, Balder's drama has presumably assumed its present form not later than the first half of the 10th century. So the written record of it is about 1,000 years old. No telling how old the verbal tradition of it is, the oral tradition of it. Whether the vulva, wise woman of the poem, is identical with the speaker in the Voluspa is purely a matter for conjecture. Nothing definitely opposes such a supposition, as in the longer poem, she foretells the fall of the gods. So in this case, she prophesies the first incident of that fall, the death of Balder. Here she is called up from the dead by Odin, anxious to know the meaning of Balder's evil dreams. And in the Voluspa, it is likewise intimated that the vulva has risen from the grave. The poem, like most of the others in the collection, is essentially dramatic rather than narrative, summarizing a story which is doubtless familiar to everyone who heard the poem recited. Doubtless familiar to everyone who heard the poem recited. There's a doggedness that comes, I mean, maybe the British stiff upper lip is probably the best example of it. The dogged determination, the pragmatism of the American, the devil may care someone idea, the hard work ethic and rugged conditions of the Australian. All of these people that pushed boundaries and frontiers. In the military, we have a term for it. It's called embrace the suck. Sometimes things just suck. There's no way around it. Sometimes things just suck. And you got to deal with it because, quite frankly, the best thinking we could come up with put us in that position to have to embrace the suck. And I really can't stand when people put themselves in them situations and start whining and, oh, goddamn, I don't know what to do. Yeah, okay. Let's start and talk. Let's think about our thoughts. And I say that because I have been an absolute bitch about it. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, I see it. I know what's going on. I know what I need to change. Damn, I don't want to have to do this again. So what does that mean for me in context for my own personal development? Maybe at some point I need to start focusing on right now and what's in front of me and doing what's in front of me to the best of my ability. I may not like it, but the best thing I could come up with put me in that spot. I've always said, if you want to change it, change your thinking process. So I changed my thinking process. I lost my house. I lost a job. I lost a car, ended up in a different state. I didn't have any room in any of that scenario to whine about it. Those were my decisions. Those were what was going on. Yes, it sucked. A little support from the friends that I had was greatly appreciated. But I didn't know I had removed for myself the liberty to whine about it too much, didn't I? Because I made those decisions. I began to take responsibility for my decisions. And that's a real sign of growth. That's, people want to talk about being masculine. That's probably the first sign that you're fucking doing it right. See, I was thinking about even these chaps that hang behind me. These are my great grandfather's chaps. And I've often said, you know, he's riding a horse on a cattle drive out of West Texas into New Mexico. I highly doubt he is struggling with the concept of whether or not he's man enough. I don't think he ever did, because his 10-year-old son or his 11-year-old son, my grandfather, was right there with him. That was what they had to do. And sometimes we need to quit looking for the easy way out and realize this is what I got to do. Where does that fall short in our society? Where's that disconnect at? I was not that way in the Army. I was not that way when I built my company, my first company. Nowhere in my mind was that a thought process. I didn't blame anybody else for anything. I simply put forth my best foot, did the best I could, and made a lot of damn money doing it. If I look at it and I'm honest about it, much like this dream we're fixing to get into, when I began to shirk my responsibility of taking responsibility for my actions and my decisions, I will submit to you that when I began to think of myself more than I really am because of what I've posted on social media, it became an issue. And then you begin to contend with a separate thought process that is more interested in maintaining a carefully configured facade on social media than you are in being the man you're supposed to be. And I don't think people understand how much of a theft that overinflated ego, that ego at all, can be poisoned, can become a cancerous tumor in our thought process because of our ability to create a personage on social media without ever having to go on the cattle drive. So here we have a being who, once he had this dream, his father goes and does one thing, his mother goes and does another. His mother goes and walks the planet and makes sure everything promises not to hurt her son. And I've talked about that. The kind of overreaching emphasis of a mother on her son. You got to let him get a skint knee. You got to let him get a fat lip. You got to let him get the shit slapped out of him. You got to let him be bullied. They got to learn to stand up for themselves. Mama ain't always going to be there. It's even in Pink Floyd's The Wall, in his song to his mother. I mean, that song right there, if you listen to those words, you will see the problem with much of what's going on with the idea of how a single mother should raise her son. You got to protect him from the world, and you got to do double duty because daddy's not around. Daddy's going to let him get hurt. Daddy's going to let him smash his finger with a hammer to teach him a lesson. I bet you don't do that anymore. Well, when it hurts you, quit doing it. I don't want him to be hurt. Well, you want him to grow up? Because as a young man, more often than not, boys raised in that scenario treat their mothers like shit. They rail at the overprotective emphasis their mother has always showered them with, not understanding that they're thinking that that's what's hampering their ability, that this external enemy of the mother is the problem, when in fact it is his failure to accept responsibility for his own actions. That the greatest dragon a young man in that situation has to slay is what's going on inside of him. Anyway, Frigga gets everything promised not to hurt her son. Well, the dad, he's like, I'm fixing to find out what's going on. This is standard. You know, if there was a fight and somebody in the neighborhood wanted to come beat me up, or their dad came to the house, they'd usually get run off. Okay, my dad wouldn't put up with that kind of nonsense. I didn't put up with much of it either. But here we go. Once were the gods together met, and the goddesses came and council held, and the far-famed ones the truth would find, why baleful dreams to Balder had come. Okay, let's think about that. So Odin and Frigg's special boy had a bad dream. And all of the gods came in, all of the community came in to support the sun. I wonder what Thor was thinking. I wonder what Tyr was thinking. Then Odin rose, the enchanter old, and the saddle he laid on Sleipnir's back. Thence rode he down to Niflhel. And the hound he met that came from hell, bloody he was on his breast before, at the father of magic he howled from afar. Forward rode Odin, the earth resounded, till the house so high of hell he reached. So he's crossing boundaries that are not typically crossed, that he has stood on the edge of before. When he gained the understanding and use of the runes and heard the songs of his ancestors, he stood at that very boundary. Now he's crossed into it on his son's behalf. Frigga's efforts to secure a promise from everything on the earth not to hurt her son. And Odin's efforts to cross into a different realm to find out what's going on here are reminiscent of any parent that has ever loved their child. There is very little I wouldn't do for my kids and my grandkids. Very little. But sometimes you got to kind of kick back and grit your teeth and say, come on, buddy, you can do it. You got to try, and let them figure it out. Odin takes this tack. He gets an answer. And instead of changing anything, he lets his son go through what he needs to go through. But it's not because, and he learned that answer, and he went through a lot of hard work, a lot of hard effort to go do that. Change is coming for his son. Now, do we protect our children from that, or do we let them go through it? Then Odin rode to the eastern door. There he knew well was the wise woman's grave. Magic he spoke, and mighty charms, till spellbound as she rode, and in death she spoke. So, what is the man to me unknown that has made me travel the troublous road? I was snowed on with snow and smitten with rain and drenched with dew. Long was I dead. So, her peaceful slumber has been roused. And she kind of got a case of the ass about it. Odin spoke, Vegtam my name, I am Valtam's son. Speak thou of hell, for of heaven I know. For whom are the benches bright with rings, and the platforms gay bedecked with gold? So we got to pay attention to that, because he's asking her a question. He already sees what's happened. He already sees this raised dais. He already sees benches bright with rings and platforms gay bedecked with gold. He knows someone special is fixing to visit whatever relationship it is he has with that goddess hell. He already knows it. It's much like with us. We already know the decisions we have to make. But are we willing to go through the effort to find out the answer why we need to change that decision? Because he went through a lot of effort here to cross this dimension. He has aggravated the dead. He has battled with the dog, the guard with Garm. Bloody was his breastplate. Howling like a warrior, challenging through the dimensions, hollering, riding Sleipnir. It's a pretty impressive image when you begin to really put it together in your mind. Holy shit, this is a pissed off dad. Not something anybody ever wants to fool with. But he already knows what's going on. In his heart, having grown up himself, he knows his son's fixing to have to go through something. And he doesn't want to lose him. We don't want to lose anybody. But that's life. That is what life is all about. Everyone we love will die or leave or go away. We will die and the people will miss us. It's a constant state of impending doom, if you wish to perceive it that way, because we have a very unhealthy perception of what it means to die. And hopefully this spirituality can remedy some of that for much of the world. I heard a line in the movie. This woman was crying over her horse that had ridden her 100 miles and then fell down dead with it has a broken leg, and she had to kill it. And she was crying. And this lady said to her this most interesting thing. She said, don't weep. He has enjoyed all of your love for his whole life. And I thought, what an amazing perception of the whole situation. Don't weep for the loss. That horse, that person, that father, that mother, that child, they have enjoyed all of your love for their whole life. What if we lived that way? What if we lived with the people that were closest to us? They knew and they understood that they are enjoying, that they should enjoy our love. They should enjoy our friendship, generosity, hospitality, all of those things in the 9 noble virtues that lend themselves to being able to let people understand how important they are in your world. That's special. That's the healthy foundation for us to find wisdom as a refuge from grief when someone makes the transition to hell's realm. We're figuring that out here as Odin goes to this extraordinary effort, as Frigga goes through this extraordinary effort to keep their son close to them. What parent wouldn't? But change is coming. Change is inevitable. It's always the way it is. The wise woman spake, here for Balder, the mead is brewed, the shining drink, and the shield lies over it. But their hope is gone from the mighty gods. Unwilling I spake, and now would I be still. So she's telling Odin, it's going to happen. And for every parent, we always have to understand it's going to happen. Your daughter that has loved you all her life is going to find another man to take your place. Your son, who has loved you all his life, is going to find another woman to take his mother's place, a partner in life. We never really lose our children, but the importance of who we are must sometimes take a different perspective. And that's a change that a lot of people never handle very well. The actions of Odin and Frigga are an example of that. The actions of so many people who will quickly jump to the defense of a child, even though they know he or she is in the wrong, is another example of that. But that's what we're supposed to do. I mean, it comes back down to is that we are all these children have. Odin spake, wise woman, cease not. I seek from thee all to know that I fain would ask. What shall the bane of Balder become, and steal the life from Odin's son? The wise woman spake, Hoth thither bears the far-famed branch. He shall the bane of Balder become, and steal the life from Odin's son. Unwilling I spake, and now would be still. Frigga got the promise from everything on earth, except for one, that far-famed branch. Odin didn't tell her he knew about it. Because he knows this transformation is something Balder has to go through. When we're sitting here making decisions about the quality of our life and what we expect of it, are we willing to make such radical changes that they cause inordinate pain on the people we love? We've got to ask that question. What kind of hardship will this bring on my children? What kind of hardship will this bring on the people that are closest to me? So on and so forth. What kind of person will I be if I don't go through with this change? What would become of Balder if he didn't go through that change? To live forever and never be hurt? I mean, honestly, obviously that's somebody you want on your side in battle. But where's the fiction? Where's the resistance? Where's the uphill climb to grow into and become something better? All the challenges are removed from in front of you. If you don't have fear or pain to motivate you to want to do something better with yourself, what motivation do you have? It's the same thing with Asatru. We are all following this faith. Everybody else in the world is following this God that gives out free shit. And we're sitting here saying, you know what? I'm going to take this road less traveled. I'm going to take this uphill course. I'm going to deal with the pain. I'm going to deal with what it takes to suffer. I'm going to put up with the bullshit. And I'm going to risk losing everything I own so I can become better. Because, quite frankly, that's what we're looking at. When we change one thing, especially the foundation of our spiritual belief, you better believe a bunch of other shit's going to change. I have resisted that. And in that resistance, I have suffered because of it. Now, Odin spake, wise woman, cease not. I seek from thee to know all to know that I fain would ask. Who shall vengeance win for the evil work or bring to the flames the slayer of Balder? The wise woman spake. Rind bears valley and Verstraslir, one night old, fights Odin's son. His hands he shall not wash, his hair he shall not comb not, till the slayer of Balder he brings to the flames. Unwilling I spake, and now would be still. So now not only is she telling him what change he's going to go through, where he's fixing to end up, she's also telling him the catalyst for this change and the vengeance of this change. So the loss of Balder brings in another character into the pantheon, a new son of Odin, it also cost them one of the blind god at the edge of the crowd, Hoder. All of a sudden, the tapestry begins to unwind. There'll be vengeance, of course, but it's going to cost. So now, not only have you lost Balder, now you've lost Hoder. Now you've got Ryan. He's going to grow up in one night, just for the sole purpose of killing. What's he going to do after that? Odin spake, wise woman, cease not. I seek from thee all to know that fain I would ask, what maidens are they who then shall weep and toss to the sky the yards of the sails? What's he talking about there? What maidens are they who shall weep and toss to the sky the yards of the sails? That could very well be one of those lines that are a part of the destruction or the radical change of the world. The yards of the sails are talking about boats or ships, and tossed to the sky, you're talking about waves. We're talking about waves so tall they toss ships into the sky. What maidens are they who shall weep? It says in the notes, to weep for Balder are the daughters of the sea god Eager, the waves whose grief will be so tempestuous that they will toss the ships to the very sky. Yards of the sails is a doubtful accurate reading, and two words at any rate in later Norse nautical speech mean respectively the tack and the sheet of the square sail. That is a flood myth. That is a representation of the flood myth coming from Northern Europe. How old is this tale? Tossed to the sky the yards of the sail. What did they see? I wrote about it. There's probably several different examples. It could be the Flandrian transgression, the slow sinking of Doggerland, all kinds of things. The comet impact in Greenland. Who knows what kind of tidal wave that sent to Northern Europe? I'm sure there's all kinds of evidence of it. The loss of Balder, the shining god, the bleeding god, the dead god, and Nanna, the woman that he loves. Wise one spake, home right Odin, be ever proud. Be ever proud. So she's sitting there saying, yeah, this is all going to happen. She's still kind of pissed at him, but she says, be ever proud. She's also kind of a dig. You're going to be proud of your son. He's fixing to make the transition from boy to man, even though he is impervious to any kind of physical harm from anything except for a mistletoe sling. He has managed to create an environment for Nanna where her heart bursts with grief at the loss of the man that she loves. That's a very powerful thing to create between two people. And occasionally you hear about it in the news, an elderly couple, the wife passes or the husband passes, and in a month or 6 months later, the other one passes. They're just lost without him. I mean, we see it happen all the time. There's real powerful love there. There's a real powerful love here too. And she joins him on a journey. But the thing about their journey is when they begin that journey, they do the things that married people do. They do the things that are amazing. The first thing Balder does is send back Draupnir to his father, the person that should own it. He turns away his father's wealth to go make it on his own. And his wife sends back the homespun garment to Frigga. The homespun garment is the garment that every young man who ventures forth from home wears. His mother gives him to go on the journey. He ends up wearing something else, and his wife sends it back as a sign that she has now taken his place at his side as his wife. This is a full-on growth into competent masculine and feminine, complementing competing counterparts that join together to go on a journey. Just like we're all looking to try to do. And it's interesting when you look at the entirety of the tale, how much effort is put into stopping that. Because undoubtedly their journey, while it is through Helheim and sitting in a high seat and a gold-adorned bench, apparently it's a pretty good place. They're doing pretty good there. They're accorded a high seat. And Hel is, although she is vilified, she's escorting them through this realm that possesses all of the knowledge of the dead ancestors that have gone on before. So much so that when he returns back as they walk away from the nonsense behind them, as they embrace the suck, as they embrace the change and come together, and they walk away from the nonsense of the society that they came from and begin this journey of learning and growth and love and all of these wonderful things, to return back to a place that is where the fields unsown bear ripened fruit, fields of leeks, and the finest of the gods that were willing to grow and become something more, the sons of Odin and the sons of Thor, these sons that were, and daughters that were willing to become something better, sit at tables and they remember, and they talk with fond remembrance of the gods that came before. And the eagle flies above the cliffs and looks at the sea as the sea recedes and everything changes and a new golden age is born. That is the pattern of life for every couple that successfully bonds to each other. They go on the journey by themselves. They're not waiting on mom and dad to bail them out. The first thing a man does to begin his journey of masculinity is to make a decision that separates himself from the cradle of love of simply existing from his mother and father. He makes a decision to step away from that safety net and take a journey. It's that simple. To step outside the safety net and go on your own journey and be successful or not. That's the first hallmark of becoming a man. The second thing is that journey might suck ass. You're going to have to deal with it. And deal with it he does. And deal with it he does, so he comes back with such knowledge that him and Hodor reside in Hrope's battle hall, and all ills are forgiven. Because at some point you got to look at it and ask yourself, how important is it really that I get that butthurt about it? I'm here now. Look at this wonderful journey I've been on. Look at this wonderful partner I have standing next to me. Look at this. I have Nana at my side. I've gone through this long journey. I've sat in the high seat. I've spent a lifetime learning and journeying. And now I'm here. And you know what? He did take my life, but he was deceived. And I understand that now. All ills are forgiven. How important is it for us to sit around and get upset about the things we perceive people doing to us as we embrace the suck of our own journey? We made the decisions to go on this journey one step at a time. There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to act like a jackass. There's always going to be somebody for no good reason whatsoever to stab you in the back or try to stab you in the back. Or perhaps they think they have a good reason. Perhaps they're ill-informed. Many people are ill-informed. Many people are operating solely with the idea of, I'm going to make sure people understand how important I am and build my ego up, and my ego will do this and that, as like this separate cancerous entity in their thought process. And there's no limit to who they won't hurt, maim, kill, steal from, or lie to make sure that stays in the proper context. To be able to walk through a passage of life, a road less traveled, and understand these ill-informed people are not worth getting that upset about. Guys, that's something that's really important to see in our lore. Not the taking of vengeance and all the other things. Now, if somebody kills your brother, you're going to have to handle it. But for the most part, much of the stuff we get our panties in a wad about on social media isn't that important. Now you get kicked off Facebook. Okay. And you know what the real threat to that was? Is that your ego wouldn't be able to show how important it is in the world. So now you're kicked off Facebook. Now what are you going to do? Well, now you got to go on a journey, don't you? Now there's time to enact some change. Now it's time to send back some of the stuff that we thought made us important and start to grow. For no one of men shall seek me more, till Loki wanders loose from his bonds, until the last strife the destroyers come. So she's not going to speak again till the end of the world. And she's probably going to give counsel to Loki because she knows Odin pissed her off because he lied to her about who he was. Huh. She comes from a previous age. So we think about the beginning of the cosmology. We never begin to think about the previous age that the Voluspa speaks of, that this wise woman speaks of. And with joy, these old women that we consider evil actively seek to create that painful change that may or may not be conducive to a healthy functioning of our society, much less ourselves. Change is one of those things that will always occur. If you're viewing it from the point of view that you're going through it right now, or your parents are trying to, or you're a parent, you're trying to prevent these kind of painful occurrences happening to your child, think twice about that. Think very hard about that. Obviously, if there's a pack of wild dogs chasing them, you got to go over and kill all the wild dogs. But or if they fall off a log into a river, you got to save them. Or if they fall out of a tree and break their arm, you got to take care of them. Or if they step on a cottonmouth, you got to pick them up and shoot the cottonmouth. Or if they, all of these things, my kids have done all these things. But then when it comes time for them to grow up, we got to let them do it. When it comes time for us to keep growing, it's important to recognize that our thought processes are what do that. Now, if I wanted to be bitter and resentful about circumstances, there are 1,000 people I could sit around and bitch about. At 50, I don't have much time for that kind of nonsense, except for Dave and Mark. They're fuckheads. Couldn't pass that up. So still got more change to do in my own life, still got more growth to do in my own world, and that's just the way it is. But I have being willing to embrace what's going on has landed me in a pretty good place in the world, in a pretty good place in life, and pretty good job, and many other things to boot. This is what it's all about. So, does anybody have any questions on that? You missed it. That was pretty good.
I know, but I was tending to children.
You did good. I'm so
We
proud of you.
finished the book.
Good. No? Well, tomorrow's Monday. Go out there and grab it by the nose and whip its ass.
Later,
Thanks,
Brian.
Brian.
Good to see you
See you
again.
guys later.